It's comforting when politics stands for certain ideas. And in the past, the two national parties, the BJP and the Congress, did stand for very identifiable ideas, whether you agreed or disagreed with them. And the left was the third pole of Indian politics. In recent years, in keeping with all the muddle of the contemporary times we find ourselves in, a lot of those distinctions have become muddied. It is difficult to understand when you vote for a party what exactly you're voting for. What is the economic policy? What is the policy of the welfare state? What will be the policy in terms of use of national resources? The debate is shrill, but the ideas are indistinguishable. To speak about whether we need to reinvent Indian politics, whether our national parties are facing a sort of existential crisis, we have Vasundhara Raje, the former Chief Minister of Rajasthan and Senior Editor of NDTV, Vishnu Som. Please welcome them on stage.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners,
we shall
मैंने कोई फौज नहीं बनाई, मैंने कोई बंदूक इस्तेमाल नहीं की, मेरा हथियार था सिर्फ कलम।
Well, he rang me and said, you should inquire about me. So I said, okay, at the moment, I'm busy with my...
All right. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be back over here. We have with us one of the most incredible leaders in Indian politics today, certainly one of the most interesting. She's a former Chief Minister of Rajasthan. She's been a 5-time MP. She's won 5 consecutive elections. She's been a former Minister of State for External Affairs, and she's been born as a princess as well. She comes into politics and remains in politics as someone with a clear vision, someone who has, in many senses, questioned and established order, particularly in the state of Rajasthan, and has created a brand of politics which a lot of people have identified as her own politics. Along the way, for Vasundhara Raje, there have been several ups and downs, but she is now focused entirely on the next year and the next assembly elections in her state. So it's a great privilege to be speaking to you this morning. And what we're talking about is the ideas that drove us, time to reinvent politics in India. We'll discuss Rajasthan and a lot of what we've spoken about in the recent past. But a lot of people would say when it comes to reinventing politics in India, those politics have already been reinvented in the last 1 year by Mr. Kejriwal and Anna Hazare. Do you find yourself as a politician at a time when your anti-corruption plank has been taken over, perhaps stolen by India against corruption?
Why do we all begin at the same point? I think that, I've been watching the political discussions over the last 3 days, and somehow we always begin there. I think that it's not a very good idea to tar everyone with the same brush. I think that the politicians have become the kind of, bugbears on which everybody vents their spleen. But the truth of the matter is, Vishnu, that everybody is involved in this. This, as Mr. Jayaprakash was saying, it's an amorphous, it's the media, it's various other institutions, it's politicians, it's people, it's civil society, it's NGOs, and all these have gathered together to conspire against the country. And I really think that's where all this begins. And if it's got to come to an end, it's got to start here for each individual person. It cannot start by just criticizing one person.
But having said that...
So where I'd like to begin is that this is a story, at least for me, for my sake, it's a story that came from a completely different direction. I've been born in this. So as Mona spoke about, and Fauzia also mentioned, two very important and interesting ladies that we were able to interact with over the last 2-3 days. And as they spoke about the fact that most women who have entered politics come through because of privileged positions or families through which they come. I really believe that even if we do come there with the privilege of our birth, we have to not just dream or hope or aspire. We have to work very, very hard to get there. In fact, we have to work doubly hard to prove ourselves.
I was going to talk to you at length about that in just a moment. But I don't want to belabor the point about India against corruption because I think we need to go beyond that as well. But I think the reason a lot of people are asking this question, and it's something that Shoma alluded to as well, is that the Congress and the BJP are seen to be different sides of the same coin as far as India against corruption's agenda is concerned. They say it's the same thing, everybody is corrupt. As you go to your voters, what are you going to tell them to prove that that model which they have is wrong?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm extremely narrow in my thinking. And I've always been very narrow in my thinking because my whole focus revolved for the last 10 years around my state.
Yes.
I really believe that it's no point us trying to prove that we're larger than life and know everything, because we really don't. And it's very, very important for us to buckle down to the business that we have been handed and to make a good job of it.
The business of governance.
The business of governance is what I was handed. And as a small child, I saw this happen in my family, so I was privileged in that sense. But when I came into this situation, I've had to work for the last 30, 40 years very, very hard to be where I am. And let me tell you one more thing. It's very difficult working because the dinner club, that is the male society, or the gender club as they call it, that one is extremely difficult to break through.
You were the first...
I found it very difficult.
The first woman chief minister of Rajasthan.
With great difficulty.
With great difficulty. Yes. Even as you go into the next elections, do you encounter a basic element, or more than basic, a very essential element of sexism within your own party, among not just your rivals, who still are uncomfortable with you being a woman and a leader?
I'm not going to break this up into your party, my party, them, us, all
Sure.
that. I'm going to just take it from where Fauzia left off and where Mona left off. And it's Afghanistan, it's Egypt, it's India. I think that we've all had it in the same way. We've all been violated in our spaces at some point in time. Someone was violated physically, some of us have been violated mentally, and some of us have really had to get through all of this to get there. And let me tell you, we haven't lost our sense of humor. And we're quite happy to continue because we know how we can fight. And we know we've done it before. And we know we're going to do it again, and we're going to make a success of it. So I'm happy with that. And I have to tell you, it wasn't, as I said, us or them or political parties. It was everyone.
Yes.
It was across the spectrum. I remember coming into this, first as somebody, and then there was this snide laughter as, well, let's see how she does. So there was kind of condescension. And then as one proved oneself, it became a little more serious, and then still more serious. And finally, it came to what it always comes to, which is character assassination, particularly of women. I mean, it's never a fair fight. I always say to them, if you will face me right there in front of me, if you sit there and fight with me, I can take you on. But below the belt, not a good idea.
But how is it?
So there were letters of character assassination that went from my sarpanches upwards.
Yes.
And there were commissions of inquiry. There were all kinds of things that happened in Rajasthan, and I'm very, very glad to say, very happy to say that the opposition or any of the people that surrounded me went through all of these things. None of this has made the difference because obviously I had done something right for me to have gained the acceptability of the ordinary person and the love and affection of that ordinary person that despite all of this have stuck with me and still claim and want to stick with me. So I must have done something right somewhere.
There's absolutely no doubt about that, and the fact that your party continues to endorse you in as strong a manner as they do. But I'd like you to contrast your role as a woman and a leader with that of Mamta Banerjee, who is also somebody who reaches down to the grassroots, but her approach to politics and her acceptability to the masses comes in a state with a very different context. So the challenges that you speak about in Rajasthan, which is perhaps our most feudal state, is quite different from what she has encountered in West Bengal. And yet here is another woman who's an incredible leader at the grassroots level.
Let me tell you at the outset, I admire this lady intensely. I've seen her over many terms in Parliament. We've sat together, we've talked together, we've spent some time together. Her way of approach is completely different to mine because that's a different way. I mean,
Yes.
I was in two different states that were very different to the way the West Bengal model. But in essence, finally, we actually get to the same thing because we really have to approach the people. And they're no different, whichever part of India they are. They're no different. They have the same problems. They have the same hurdles that they have to cross. And we just have to find innovative ways of getting around them. And unless we are in very, very close contact with them, and unless we bring them to the table with us, and unless we're able to redress their grievances in whatever manner it may seem, it comes to naught. And therefore, whether it's Mamta, whether it's me, or whether it's anybody else in the country, we're facing the same challenges. We deal with them maybe in different ways, but we've got to be able to take them on board, bring them on the table, and do it as successfully as we can so that we give a large amount of satisfaction and happiness to the largest number of people that we can possibly reach out to.
How would you deal with some of the contemporary economic issues which the country faces? I know your party's position on FDI. I mean, there are some people who like it, a lot of people who say it's not worth it. But the reason I'm asking, without getting into the specifics of FDI, is it's not just FDI. There is land rights as well. And there seems to be this element of great rejection at one level, at the grassroots level, of the ideas that politicians from the top seem to be enforcing. I think that's been reflected upon in a couple of sessions over here as well. As a politician who wants to bring economic growth into your state, how would you address this sense of a difference between India and Bharat?
It's not difficult at all, actually. It's just about bridging the gap between the urban centers and the rural centers. The aspirations are very much the same, whether you sit in the cities or whether you're in the villages. You all want to improve your lot, and you want to do better for your families, and you want to be able to get ahead just living. And I think that it's not at all difficult. But for rural India, we have very, very important things to look at. And that, as I said, are basic things like electricity, like water, like being able to communicate.
You made Rajasthan self-sufficient in electricity. It was when you were in the past as
Well,
chief
I
minister.
was told that this can never happen, that there are only some states, like, say, Gujarat, where electricity can be given at 24 hours to people. And I think that, since I always enjoy looking at problems, and I looked at this problem, and I couldn't understand why we would not be able to give electricity to the largest number of people at any given time. And I discovered it was only because we weren't paying attention. When we paid attention, when we made time to care, when we sat and monitored with the rest of our officers, we found that we were able to get around the problem. We were able to bring down the losses of electricity from 45% to 20%. We were able to bring people on board because you actually cannot tell people what to do. You have to make them understand that it is good for them and that it is for them that we're doing all of this. When they come on board with you, everything happens. It's just because, without speaking to them, you order them to do something.
Right.
Or you punish them because they haven't done something. I think that's really archaic. That isn't the way to deal with them anymore. If you deal with them as a loving family, if you deal with them on the table, they understand exactly what you want to do. Of course, there are times when you need to be able to be a little more strict about it. Like when I was electrifying the villages and we were bringing the electricity in, I had a lot of my officers that told me that today 500 villages have been electrified. And I was always skeptical about that. So I would take a cross-section of 25 villages and ring them myself. And when I rang the Sarpanch and found from the Sarpanch that he had not got his electricity, well, some heads rolled. And when some people started to understand that the check is going to be directly with those people, they started telling the truth. And then the electrification happened. And within a year, we had 24-hour electricity to the people who'd asked for the electricity. So why can't we do it? I think that we don't have the will to do it. And I think the time has come, and that's the reason why I'm saying to you that it is the ideas which now have to motivate us into a different kind of politics. That is the subject that you've given me today. And I have to tell you that over the last 3 days, actually, I must say thank you to you all and thank you to Tarun for having given me the opportunity of coming in contact with so many wonderful people and so much great thought. David Christian, I don't think, maybe he's not here today. But God, I mean, with big history, what he opened up for us. And you say to me today, and possibly people won't be able to understand, how could you apply that to a state? But I really believe that is the kind of education which would open up the minds of our children, put them onto a trajectory which is different to the Pathshala concept. I mean, Mr. Rajan Bharti Mittal was on the stage 2 days ago, and when he came to us with the concept of the public-private partnership model for the school, I had lots of people in Rajasthan saying to me, how is that possible? How can you bring private entrepreneurship into education? And I thought to myself, well, if I can give a boost to that Pathshala, if I can give an incentive to those parents to send those kids to school, not just because they wanted a hot meal for their little girl children, but because they actually wanted the girl children to be educated with their boys. I also wanted that the teachers started to upgrade themselves. To create that kind of atmosphere, it was important to bring in a Rajan Bharti Mittal. It was important to be able to bring the vision of a David Christian and to create that kind of education for the people. If you and I can have it, why can't they?
Sure. But let me,
I mean, that was a huge idea.
Sure.
I mean, what are the ideas that would really drive? The idea of education, of educating particularly the girl child?
Yes.
Of bringing the basic structures to the everyday life of people in the village levels, to be able to create the health structures. And today I was just fascinated by the first talk of Ms. Lipkin.
Right.
I cannot understand why those kind of things cannot happen at the state level. And I brought that in with stem cell research for the first time in Rajasthan.
Yes.
Everybody said to me, stem cell research? But I had these amazing professors and medical doctors around me that sat down and put the team together. And today we're doing great things in Rajasthan with medical research, with stem cell research. Sure. I'm just saying there are small things. Now, he's a man that I would love to pick his brain.
Yes.
David Christian is a man that I would like to spend time with, and I started that dialogue with him. I hope that I'll be able to take it to another level. But these are the ideas that we need to bring. We're fed up of listening to this politician doing that, this kind of,
our vision is stifled,
our vision
it's limited,
is so
right?
limited, so
and
narrow.
I think to a large extent, we in the media feed on that. But I can't get away from what I am.
I was coming to that.
And so before you, but let me, since we are talking about ideas, and this question, I'm sure you've been asked about in the past, but it is still quite interesting. The BJP criticizes the Gandhis for being virtually royalty. They say that, it's a dynastic system of politics which is completely wrong. India doesn't need it. But then you are literally royalty. Isn't there a basic problem over there in how the BJP goes about dealing with the Gandhis, and on the other hand, depends on you with your background?
Let's just finish BJP and Congress and all this kind of thing. Yes, we are being ruled by a feudal democracy at this moment. But let me tell you one thing. I'm very proud of being feudal, because this wasn't the kind of feudalism we learned. What we were taught was to be able to be humble and to be able to treat our people as family. We didn't pillage and loot them. We took care to see that they were comfortable, that they were loved, that they were strengthened. And that is one of the reasons why the feudals or the Maharajas get elected time and time again. I wonder why that happens.
Well, your son's been elected as well.
I wonder, I mean, it's just one of those things I have not been able to understand. But again, as I said, we must have done something right. We don't spend time talking down to people. We go to the people and ask them what they want. We sit with them. We don't call them by their names. We call them Chacha, Kaka, Tau. These are the kind of names. We treat them like family. We love them. And this is one of the things my mother taught me when I went into politics. She said, listen, 5 fingers are not the same. They have to all be dealt with differently. But let's not deal with them in a professional kind of way, where we bring in caste, we bring in creed, we divide people, we bring in hatred, and we create vote banks for ourselves.
Yes.
No, let's do it the other way. Let's include everybody. Let's love everybody. Let's bring them together as a family. And you will see that that kind of politics will succeed way beyond what you ever thought. And I think that's one of the reasons why basically I never lost an election.
Yes.
I've been around for a long, long time, and I believe in this doctrine of caring and love. And as long as you give them that, it changes. And let's getting back to this. BJP and Congress and all this business is all there. But I really believe that every single politician has a duty to do to his people. And I think every single politician needs to look inside himself. But it's not just the politicians. People like yourselves, people like the media need to be able to do a lot more. Not just criticize. Paid news doesn't help, does it?
No.
No.
Last I heard.
People getting huge unsecured loans doesn't help, does it? These all come from somewhere. This is a dinner club. Everyone feeds into it. Everyone has to pull their fingers out. Everybody has to sit down on the same table and start taking a long, hard look at themselves. Then there's no question of criticizing and pointing fingers at each other. It's about all of us and what we do. Because if you give, when I talk about my officers, I said when the young politicians come in, they don't know what it is and how to go corrupt. They're taught how to be corrupt. So these are the kind of things that we need to be able to get rid of. If you sit at that table and exercise yourselves and come to those issues, I'm sure at some point in time, we'll be able to come to a formula.
But the dialogue on corruption needs to continue, even if it is in the media, which might have a million
No. I agree with you. Kindly. Therefore, we must recognize that no one's perfect. That this kind of situation, is there in business, it's there in politics, it's there in media, it's there in judiciary, it's there everywhere.
I don't think anybody assumes that it's all clean and everything works. But I think the point that you're making is interesting about how everybody needs to perhaps look and introspect on the issue of corruption, since it's something that affects a lot of us. I just wanted to ask you about, a little bit about your family as well. Were you happy when your son wanted to enter politics?
No, I did my best to keep him out. But as I said, again, if everyone starts to revile politics, then a lot of people don't want to I didn't want my son to go into it. I made every single excuse in the book, from this children being small, to the kind of atmosphere that prevails, the kind of below-the-belt wars that are fought, and I tried my best to keep him out. But unfortunately, there are some genes, and everyone's talking about those genes. And there is some genes which probably get wired in the back of your head somewhere, and you keep on at it. You feel that you have duty. You feel that there was a huge...
and that came from him?
Yeah, no, it came from him. He said, no, I also want to go and do my duty by them. Because our families have been nurtured by people. Yes. They have been loved and cared and brought to this situation by people. We need to give back. And if we give back, he said, I want to be able to be in that position to do it. For a long time, for 5 years, I kept him out. Finally, I did break down. But I'm very happy to see that he is a politician that stays away from it all, stays quietly in the back of it all. He's won his elections and is working away at trying to improve the lot without being center stage.
Sure.
You don't have to be center stage to do all of this. You can do your business quietly in the little space that you've been given. And if everyone exercises themselves in that little space, that space changes.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do.
Yeah. We have no more time in this session, but just one more question. Again, at the cost of perhaps being a cliched question, your family is politically divided. On the one hand, we've had Madhavrao Scindia, Jyotiraditya Scindia go towards the Congress, you, your son, with the BJP. At a personal level, how does it work amongst you?
Me, my son, my mother, and my younger sister, all of us, at some point in Parliament. I have a feeling that, people have the right to think, and that's what we're here for. People have the right to disagree, and people have the right to agree. And I think even within families, you can't force people to think in one particular line. And I think in that sense, our family has been very good about the fact that we will all agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. And if you have agreed to disagree, and if you're good in yours, because if my brother and my nephew, they're brilliant at what they do, mm-hmm. and I think they return the compliment to us. Mm-hmm. So as far as we're doing our duty by the people, and as long as we don't have a problem about it, I think
there's no animosity at all within the family in that sense.
When you start to disagree, there may be some animosities definitely that creep in, but we're able to get over that and live with the problem. And I'm sure at the end of the day, what work we're doing speaks more for us than what is written up about us in print.
All right, well, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. That's going to be a year from now. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Vasundhara Raje, working and focused very hard on Rajasthan. She told me yesterday when I sort of met her for a little while that, look, Vishnu, that really, honestly, is my only focus. And I think we've referred to that as well. It's going to be a huge election for you, a very difficult election, but all the very best. And let's see if some of the ideas that you picked up over here, or some of the ideas you believe in, actually get translated on the ground.
I have to thank Vishnu because it must have been very hard for him. Being a TV presenter and all that. It must have been extremely hard for him to focus on the ordinary things and to be able to get the exciting things into media. But I really, really thank you for having taken the time off to allow the state to become center stage, more than personality.
Sure.
And I'm really, really happy that you gave me the opportunity to put my state. Because if you see, and for all of you, and thank you, Tarun, again, because from the richest right down to the villages have been represented on the stage. And I have been delighted to hear Mansaramji and Devaramji and their group when they came in from Madhya Pradesh. And all the way up to all the people who've been on the stage, from Shashi Ruia downwards, everybody who's been there. Everyone's had different viewpoints. And that is the excitement of India. This is what goes to make this melting pot. This is what goes to make this wonderful, interesting country. And I'm sure that there are going to be transitional periods of horrible, horrible problems for all of us. But we're going to get through this. Because these kind of ideas that have come to us today on this stage for the last 3 days are the ideas that are going to push us to go to that extreme and to make this country into something wonderful, basically like it used to be before.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you all. Thank you all for taking time to listen. Thank you.
घनश्याम चंडिका छत्रधारिणी गिरिजा जय काली जय काली जय
my bounden duty and I must endure.